Frank Holloway stood at his kitchen counter, frost crawling up the window behind him like fingers reaching for warmth they'd never find. The coffee maker gurgled. Linda's coffee maker, the one she'd picked out at Target 3 years back, and his phone sat face up on the formica, glowing with an email he'd read 4 times already. Frank, things didn't work out with Derek. I'm coming home Tuesday to discuss our situation. Leave the garage door open. L. No. Dear Frank. No, I'm sorry. Just a command, like he was the help. 38 years of marriage, and she'd boiled it down to 9 words and a dash. His hands shook when he reached for the mug. Coffee sloshed over the rim, pooled on the counter. He didn't wipe it up, just stood there, 65 years old in his own kitchen, and felt the walls close in. Tuesday was 2 days away. But that was only the beginning. Part 1. The First Blow. Frank didn't move for a long time. The coffee went from scalding to lukewarm in his hand, and he barely noticed. Through the window above the sink, he could see Doris Fletcher's house next door. Yellow siding, same vintage as his own, 1970s farmhouse that had seen better decades. Her kitchen light was on. She was an early riser, too. He set the mug down, careful this time, and read the email a 5th time. Maybe he'd missed something. A hint of remorse buried in the punctuation, a softness he'd overlooked. Nothing. Linda had left 4 months ago. Didn't say she was leaving exactly. Just said she needed space to think and moved into a rental across town. 2 weeks later, Frank saw her at the Kroger with a man half her age, gym rat build, tight shirt, the kind of tan you don't get in Indiana winters. Derek something. She'd looked right past Frank like he was a checkout display she had no use for. The divorce papers came by email a week after that. Clinical, efficient. She'd hired a lawyer in South Bend, somebody with a fancy website. Frank had signed them. What else was he going to do? Beg? He'd spent 38 years keeping the peace, swallowing his pride when she criticized his work clothes at family dinners, nodding when she told their kids, "Your father doesn't really get people," pretending not to hear when she sighed every time he came to bed smelling like road tar and diesel. A good husband bends, his own father had told him once. A good husband makes room. Frank had made so much room he damn near disappeared. He pulled a plate from the cupboard, force of habit, and set it across from his at the little kitchen table, then stopped, stared at it, pulled it back, and put it in the sink. The house was so quiet he could hear the furnace kick on in the basement, a low rumble like a distant truck. He'd rebuilt that furnace himself 10 years ago, lying on the concrete floor with a trouble light and a socket set, because Linda said they couldn't afford a repairman, saved them $1,200. She'd thanked him by asking why he couldn't fix things before they broke. Frank walked into the living room. The couch sagged where he'd been sleeping since she left. Didn't feel right sleeping in their bed alone. The TV remote sat on the armrest. Old westerns on cable, mostly. Men who knew when to talk and when to shut up. Men who drew lines in the dirt and meant it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Danny, his grandson, 19 years old, hadn't called in 6 months, maybe longer. "Hey, Grandpa, want to grab lunch tomorrow? Been too long?" Frank's chest loosened. Somebody still remembered he existed. He texted back with 2 thumbs, slow and deliberate. "Sure, noon at the diner?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Perfect. See you then." Frank sat down on the couch, phone still in his hand, and felt something close to hope. Maybe Linda leaving wasn't the end of everything. Maybe the people who mattered would stick around. Outside, a car door slammed. He looked through the front window. Doris was crossing her yard in a wool coat and slippers, carrying a casserole dish covered in foil. Frank opened the door before she knocked. "Doris, you don't have to." "I know I don't," she said, and walked past him into the kitchen like she'd done it 100 times. Set the dish on the stove, tuna casserole. He could smell it through the foil. Cream of mushroom, celery, that crispy topping she made with potato chips. "You eaten today?" she asked. "I'm fine." She looked at him the way his mother used to. Didn't say a word, just looked. "I'll eat it later," Frank said. "You do that." Doris adjusted her coat. "You get any sleep last night?" "Some." "Liar." Frank almost smiled. "I'm managing." Doris glanced at the phone still in his hand, then at the coffee mug on the counter with the brown puddle around it. Her eyes were sharp, missed nothing. She contact you? Doris asked. Frank hesitated. Doris had watched the whole thing from her kitchen window. Linda loading suitcases into her car, Derek's pickup idling in the driveway. The way Linda hadn't looked back once. Doris had brought casseroles every week since. Never asked questions, just brought food and left. Email, Frank said finally. Wants to come back Tuesday. Discuss our situation. Doris's jaw tightened. She say sorry? No. She asked if you'd take her back? No. Told me to leave the garage door open. Doris was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" Frank looked at the coffee maker, at the table with one plate, at the couch with the indent where he'd been sleeping. "I don't know," he said. Doris pulled her coat tighter. "Well, you think on it." "But Frank, you've spent a long time bending. Might be time to see if you can still stand up straight." She let herself out. The screen door clapped shut behind her. That familiar metal-on-wood sound that meant home, meant safety, meant somebody gave a damn. Frank stood in the kitchen and looked at the casserole. Then he looked at the calendar on the wall. Monday the 9th, Tuesday the 10th, circled in red. Dentist appointment he'd already canceled. Tuesday the 10th. The day Linda expected to walk back into his life like she'd just stepped out for groceries. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, knees creaking. Hadn't been up here in weeks. The bedroom door was closed. He opened it. Everything looked the same. Bed made. Linda's side table empty except for dust. He walked to the closet, pulled the string for the overhead bulb. Half empty. She'd taken her good clothes, left the old ones. He pushed hangers aside, looking for, he wasn't sure what. Evidence, proof. A reason. On the shelf above the hanging rod, he saw the old jewelry box. Wooden, carved edges, her grandmother's. Linda loved that box. Kept it polished. Frank pulled it down, heavier than he remembered. He carried it to the bed, sat down, opened the lid. Empty. Not just empty. Cleared out. The little velvet compartments, the drawer where she kept his mother's wedding ring, the one Frank's dad had saved 3 months' pay to buy in 1952. All of it, gone. Frank's hands went still. He tipped the box. A piece of paper fluttered out. Printer paper, folded once. He opened it. An eBay receipt. Sale confirmation. One vintage gold wedding band. Art Deco setting, sold December 18th for $340. December 18th. Linda had needed space on January 2nd. She'd sold his mother's ring 2 weeks before she left. Frank sat on the bed, receipt in his hand, and felt the bottom drop out of everything he'd been telling himself. She hadn't made a mistake. She hadn't panicked. She'd planned this. Part 2. Deeper cut. Frank didn't sleep that night, lay on the couch with the receipt on the coffee table, staring at it like it might change if he looked long enough. $340. His mother had worn that ring for 43 years. Told Frank once when he was a boy that it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever owned. Linda sold it for the price of a grocery run. Morning came gray and cold. Frank made coffee, same routine, same mug, but his hands were steadier now. Anger was good for that. Turned the shaking into something solid. He drove to the diner at 11:30, early for lunch with Danny, but he needed to be out of that house. The truck had 200,000 miles on it, needed an alignment, but it started every time. Frank had rebuilt the transmission himself at 150. You take care of things, they take care of you. The diner sat on Route 6, red vinyl booths, and a counter with chrome stools. Sal's place. I've been there since the 50s. Frank slid into a booth by the window, ordered coffee, waited. Danny pulled up at noon in a little Honda with a cracked windshield. Kid got out, jeans and a hoodie, beard coming in patchy, looked like he'd lost weight. "Grandpa." Danny slid into the booth across from him, all smiles. "Man, it's good to see you." "You too, son." Frank meant it. Danny looked like Frank's boy, Michael had at that age. Same build, same way of ducking his head when he was nervous. The waitress brought menus. Danny ordered a burger. Frank ordered soup, wasn't hungry but needed to order something. They talked easy at first. Danny's classes. He'd dropped out of community college last semester, just taking a break. His job at the auto parts store. It's okay, pays the bills. His mom, Sarah, Frank's daughter. She's good, busy with work. Frank listened, watched. Something in Danny's eyes wasn't quite landing. The kid kept glancing at his phone on the table between them. So how you holding up? Danny asked. With, the divorce and everything? Managing, Frank said. That sucks, man. I'm sorry. Danny twisted his napkin. Mom told me. Said Grandma just needed some space or whatever. Frank sipped his coffee. Said nothing. You ever think about, Danny hesitated. I don't know. Updating your will or anything? Making sure everything's in order? Frank set the mug down slow. My will? Yeah, Danny's face went red. Not like that. I just mean, with the divorce, financial stuff, making sure nobody tries to take the house or whatever. The phone on the table buzzed. Danny glanced at it, didn't pick it up. It buzzed again and again. You need to get that? Frank asked. Nah, it's just. Danny flipped the phone face down. It's nothing. The food came. Danny ate fast, kept talking, asked about the farmhouse. Asked if Frank had thought about downsizing, maybe getting something smaller, easier to manage. Asked if the deed was in both names or just Frank's. Every question landed like a stone in Frank's gut. Why are you asking me this, Danny? I'm not. I'm just curious. Family stuff, The phone buzzed again. Danny grabbed it, silenced it, shoved it in his pocket. But not before Frank saw the screen. 7 missed calls. All from the same contact. Mom. Frank pushed his soup bowl aside. Your mother send you here? What? No. Grandpa, I just wanted to. She tell you to ask about the house? Danny's face crumpled. It's not like that. Then what's it like? The kid looked at the table. 18, 19 years old, and he looked about 12. I just wanted to see you, he said quietly. Frank wanted to believe him. God, he wanted to. But the calls, the questions, the timing, right after Linda's email. You finish your lunch, Frank said. Pulled his wallet out, dropped a 20 on the table. I need to get going. Grandpa, wait. Frank stood, looked down at his grandson. This boy he'd taught to fish, taken to baseball games, loved like his own. Next time somebody sends you to do their dirty work, Frank said, you tell them no. He walked out. Didn't look back. The drive home was 6 miles. Frank took the long way, down Old 6 past the feed store and the Methodist church where he and Linda had married in 1987. White clapboard, tall steeple, bells that rang on Sundays. He hadn't been to church since she left, couldn't stomach the looks, the whispers, the assumption that he must have done something to drive her away. His phone rang. He ignored it. Rang again. Sarah, his daughter. He pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. Answered. Dad, what did you say to Danny? No hello. No, how are you? Just straight in. Told him the truth, Frank said. He's crying. Says you accused him of. Dad, he just wanted to see you. He wanted to scope out the house for your mother. Silence. Then, that's not fair, isn't it? Mom's in a bad spot. Derek dumped her. She's got nowhere to go. Frank laughed. Couldn't help it. It came out bitter and hard. And that's my problem? She's still your wife. No, she's my ex-wife. Papers are signed. She made her choice. You're being cruel. Frank closed his eyes, pressed his forehead against the steering wheel. Sarah, your mother sold my mother's wedding ring on eBay 2 weeks before she left for $340. Silence on the other end. You hear me? Frank asked. Sarah's voice faltered. I didn't know that. Well, now you do. Dad, I'm sure she needed money for the deposit on the apartment. Don't. Frank's voice came out flat. Don't make excuses for her. She stole from me. She planned this. And now she wants to waltz back in because her boyfriend got bored. She's still family. No, Frank said. She's not. He hung up, turned the phone off, sat there on the shoulder of Old Six with the engine running and watched a tractor crawl across a distant field, turning over black dirt, preparing for spring. When he got home, Doris was on her porch, knitting. She looked up when he pulled in, didn't wave, just watched. Frank got out of the truck, stood in his driveway, looked at his house, white clapboard, wraparound porch, 10 acres behind it that used to be soybeans before he let them go back to grass, paid off 5 years ago, his name on the deed, 40 years of work in that house. Linda wanted it. That's what this was. The lunch with Danny, the questions. She wanted the house, and she was building a case to take it. Frank climbed the porch steps. The wood creaked under his boots, needed replacing, had for years. He unlocked the front door. Stood in the threshold. Tuesday. She'd said Tuesday. He pulled out his phone, turned it back on, opened the browser, searched for locksmiths, found one in town, dialed. Yeah, he said when someone answered. I need all my locks changed. Tomorrow if you can do it, all of them. The voice on the other end asked for the address. Frank gave it, scheduled it for Monday afternoon. When he hung up, he looked at the door. The old brass knob Linda had picked out at the hardware store 20 years ago. The deadbolt they'd installed together after a string of burglaries one summer. Come Tuesday, her key wouldn't fit anymore. Frank stepped inside, closed the door behind him. For the first time in 4 months, it felt like his house. The locksmith showed up Monday at 2 o'clock. Young guy, maybe 30, drove a white van with Anderson Security printed on the side. Took him 40 minutes to change all 3 doors, front, back, garage. New deadbolts, brushed nickel, solid as anything Frank had felt. You want me to dispose of the old locks? The kid asked. No, Frank said. I'll keep them. The locksmith handed over 3 keys on a ring. That'll be 200 even. Frank paid cash, watched the van drive away, stood on his porch with the new keys in his palm, feeling their weight. Doris came out on her porch. Didn't say anything, just gave him a long look. Approval, maybe, or warning. Hard to tell with Doris. Frank went inside, tested each lock. Smooth, no sticking, no wiggle. He was pouring coffee when headlights swept across the kitchen window. A sedan, dark blue, pulling into the driveway. Pastor Miles. Frank set the pot down, walked to the door, opened it before the pastor knocked. Evening, Frank. Paul Miles was 58, round in the middle, thinning on top, wore khakis and a windbreaker. Methodist through and through, no hellfire, just soft persistence. Got a minute? Sure. They sat at the kitchen table. Frank offered coffee. Pastor Miles took it black, same as Frank. Heard you had some locksmith work done, Miles said. News traveled fast in a town of 4,000. Needed new locks, Frank said. Miles wrapped both hands around the mug. Also heard Linda's planning to come by tomorrow. Frank didn't answer. Frank, Miles leaned forward. I've known you and Linda a long time. Married you two myself. Baptized your kids. I know. She made a mistake, a big one. But marriages, good marriages, they survive mistakes. She didn't make a mistake, Frank said. She sold my mother's wedding ring 2 weeks before she left me. Then she moved in with a man young enough to be her son. That's not a mistake. That's a plan. Miles frowned. I didn't know about the ring. Nobody did, until I found the receipt. The pastor was quiet for a moment. Outside, the wind picked up. Branches scratched against the siding. Forgiveness is hard, Miles said, but it's what we're called to do. 70 times 7, the Lord said. I've forgiven her, Frank said. That doesn't mean I have to let her rob me again. She's not trying to rob you. She's trying to come home. This isn't her home anymore. Miles set his mug down. Frank, I understand you're hurt, but closing the door on her, literally, that's not the Christian thing to do. Frank looked at the pastor. Good man. Meant well. Believed what he was saying. You remember your sister? Frank asked. Miles blinked. Carol? Yeah. Didn't she reconcile with her ex-husband a few years back, after he cleaned out her savings account? The pastor's face tightened. And didn't he do it again? Frank continued. 6 months later, maxed out her credit cards and disappeared? Miles didn't answer. Carol still paying off that debt? Frank asked. That's different. How? Because Miles stopped, rubbed his face. When he looked up, something had shifted in his eyes. You're right, it's not different. They sat in silence. The furnace kicked on downstairs. The house settled around them. I told Carol to forgive him, Miles said quietly. Told her to give him another chance, that God honors reconciliation. He looked at his coffee. She listened to me, and it near about destroyed her. Frank said nothing. I carry that, Miles said, every time I see her. Paul, Frank's voice was gentle. Some people don't want to be saved. They want to take what they can and move on. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, it doesn't mean being a fool twice. Miles nodded slowly, stood up. I should go. Frank walked him to the door. At the threshold, Miles turned. For what it's worth, Frank, I think you're doing the right thing. He glanced at the new deadbolt. Hard thing, but right. After the pastor left, Frank sat on the couch and watched the light fade outside. The sun set early in January. By 5:30 it was full dark. He didn't turn on the lamps, just sat there in the dimness, listening to the house. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Frank, this is Linda. I'll be there tomorrow at 9 a.m. Make sure you're home. Not a request, a command. Frank stared at the screen, started to type a response 3 times, deleted it each time. Finally, he turned the phone off, set it on the coffee table. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Frank didn't sleep much. Lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What he'd say, what she'd say, whether Derek would be with her. By 7 a.m., he was showered, dressed, coffee made. He stood at the kitchen window and watched the sun come up cold and pale over the back field. Cardinals were active this time of year, bright spots against the snow. He saw one now, hopping along the fence line. His father used to say cardinals were good luck. Sign of life in the dead of winter. Frank could use some luck. At 8:30 he heard an engine, not Linda's car, too loud. He walked to the front window, pulled the curtain aside. A pickup truck, silver, loud muffler. Derek. The truck pulled into the driveway, stopped behind Frank's F-150. Derek got out first. 6 feet, gym build, tight shirt even in January cold. Then Linda, she looked the same. Jeans, boots, puffy jacket, hair done, makeup, she looked good. 62 years old and she'd kept herself up. Frank let the curtain fall, walked to the door, stood behind it, hand on the new deadbolt. Footsteps on the porch, the scrape of a key in the lock. It turned, didn't catch, silence. The key rattled again. Harder. Then the doorbell rang. Frank didn't move. It rang again, then pounding. Frank! Linda's voice, muffled through the door. Frank, open up! He stood there, heart hammering, hand on the deadbolt. I know you're in there, she shouted. Your truck's here. Open the damn door. More pounding, then Derek's voice. Hey, buddy, come on. Open up. We just need to talk. Frank closed his eyes, took a breath. Buddy, like they were friends. He turned and walked back to the kitchen, stood at the window looking out at the back field. The cardinal was gone. The pounding continued. Linda was screaming now. This is my house too, Frank. You can't just lock me out. I have a right to be here. Frank's hands were steady on the counter. You're being ridiculous, Linda shouted. We're married. This is community property. A new sound. Derek's voice, quieter. Then Derek's face appeared at the kitchen window, cupped hands around his eyes, peering in. Their eyes met. Derek grinned, held up his phone. Filming. Frank stared at him, didn't move, didn't react. Derek's grin widened. He turned the phone toward Linda, still filming. Then another sound, a screen door slamming. Frank looked past Derek. Doris Fletcher was crossing her yard, 71 years old in house slippers and a bathrobe, walking straight toward Linda and Derek like she owned the whole county. "Ma'am," Doris said, voice carrying across the cold air, "you need to leave." Linda whirled. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You left him. You don't get to come back when your boy toy gets bored." Derek lowered his phone. "Hey, old lady, this is none of your—" "I'm talking to her," Doris said. Didn't even look at Derek. Kept her eyes locked on Linda. "You moved out. You filed for divorce. You made your choice. Now you deal with it." Linda's face went red. "How dare you? How dare you?" Doris stepped closer. She was a foot shorter than Linda, but somehow she seemed taller. 38 years that man gave you. And you repay him by stealing his mother's wedding ring and shacking up with this—" She gestured at Derek without looking at him. "Child." "We're going to call the police," Linda said. "He can't lock me out of my own house." "Go ahead and call them," Doris said. "Tell them you want into a house you don't live in anymore. See how that goes?" Derek stepped forward. "Look, Grandma." Doris finally turned to him. "You film me, boy. I'll sue you for harassment so fast your head'll spin. Now get off this property." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Linda grabbed Derek's arm. "Come on, we're leaving." "Babe, we should—" "Now." They walked back to the truck. Derek climbed in first, slammed the door. Linda paused at the passenger side, looked back at the house. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer, Frank," she shouted. "You can't just lock me out of my house." The truck started, backed out. Gravel sprayed as Derek hit the gas. Frank watched them disappear down the road. Doris stood in his driveway for a moment, arms crossed, watching them go. Then she turned and walked back to her house. Didn't look at Frank's window. Didn't wave. Just went inside. Frank's phone, he'd turned it back on that morning, buzzed on the counter. An email from a law firm in South Bend. Subject: Notice of Legal Action. Holloway Fior Holloway. Frank opened it, skimmed the legalese. Linda was suing, claiming constructive abandonment, saying Frank had emotionally abused her, driven her away, demanding access to the marital home and 50% of all assets. The email was time-stamped 8:45 a.m. Before she'd even tried the door, Frank set the phone down, looked at the new deadbolt on the door, then he picked the phone back up and dialed Bill Tompkins, the only lawyer in town. "Bill," he said when the man answered. "It's Frank Holloway. I need you." Bill Tompkins had an office above the hardware store on Main Street, 2 rooms, wood paneling, filing cabinets that looked older than Frank. Bill himself was 52, flannel shirt under a sport coat, reading glasses on a chain. He'd handled Frank's house closing back in '85, drawn up a simple will 10 years ago. They sat across from each other at a desk, buried in paper. "Let me see it," Bill said. Frank handed over his phone. Bill read the email, lips moving slightly, set the phone down. "Constructive abandonment," Bill said. "That's a hell of a claim." "What's it mean?" "Means she's saying you made the marriage so unbearable she had no choice but to leave. Emotional abuse, neglect, that sort of thing." Bill leaned back in his chair, which creaked. "If she can prove it, she's got a case for the house, alimony, the works." Frank's jaw tightened. "I didn't abuse her." "I know that, but proving it's another matter." Bill picked up a pen, tapped it against his palm. "She hire Keegan Associates?" Frank nodded. "They're expensive, out of South Bend. They don't take cases they don't think they can win." Bill looked at Frank over his glasses. "You got any evidence? Anything that shows she left of her own accord?" "The divorce papers. She filed them." "After she left? Her lawyer'll say she only filed after you refused to work on the marriage, made her feel unsafe." Bill set the pen down. "What else?" Frank thought. "She sold my mother's wedding ring on eBay before she left. I got the receipt." Bill sat up straighter. "When?" "December 18th. She left January 2nd. "That's premeditation. That's good." Bill grabbed a legal pad, started writing. "What else?" "She moved in with her boyfriend, Derek Paulson. He's 34. Adultery doesn't play like it used to, but it helps. Anything else?" Frank hesitated. "My grandson came to see me yesterday. Danny. He was asking about my will, about the house. Found out my daughter sent him." "Linda's daughter too?" "Yeah." Bill wrote faster. "They're building a case to contest your estate. Probably planning to force a sale of the house, claim half. He looked up. You got any witnesses to the boyfriend? Whole town's seen them together. That's circumstantial. I need something concrete. Photos, social media, anything. Frank shook his head. I don't do that stuff. Facebook and all that. Linda or the boyfriend got social media? I don't know. Bill swiveled to his computer, old desktop with a humming tower. Typed, waited, clicked. Derek Paulson, South Bend area. More clicking. Here we go. Instagram. Public account. Bill's face changed. Oh, this is good. He turned the monitor. Frank leaned forward. Derek's Instagram. Photos of him at the gym, at bars, in Linda's rental apartment. Recent post from last week. Photo of Derek standing in front of a white farmhouse. Caption reading, upgrading soon. Country living here we come. Frank stared at the photo. That's my house. When was this posted? January 28th, 6 days ago. Bill screenshotted it. He's stupid. That's good for us. More clicking. More posts. Him and Linda at restaurants, bars, one from Christmas, New Year, new life, new lady. Bill looked at Frank. He's documenting the whole affair. Can you use that? Absolutely. Shows she left willingly, moved in with him, and they were planning to take your house. Bill closed the browser. But Frank, I'll be straight with you. This is going to cost money. Keegan Associates will drag this out, file motions, make me respond to everything. Discovery, depositions. You're looking at 5, maybe 10,000 in legal fees. Frank's stomach dropped. I don't have that. You got the house. That's all I got, and I'm not losing it. Bill leaned back. Here's the thing. They know you don't have money for a long fight. That's the strategy. Bleed you dry, make you settle. I'm not settling. Then we fight. But it won't be easy. Frank stood, paced to the window, looked down at Main Street, hardware store, diner, post office. The town where he'd lived his whole life, raised his kids, worked 40 years on the county road crew, patching asphalt and plowing snow. I'll find the money, Frank said. Frank, I'll find it. Bill was quiet. Then, okay, I'll file a response to their motion. We'll request a hearing. I'll need everything you've got, receipts, emails, texts, anything that shows her behavior. Frank turned from the window. Thank you, Bill. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. Frank drove home. The truck heater was busted, had been for 2 years, and his breath fogged the windshield. He stopped at a red light, the only traffic signal in town, and saw Lou and Margie coming out of the diner. They saw him. Lou raised a hand halfway, then dropped it. Margie leaned in, whispered something. They both looked away. The light turned green. Frank drove through. At the Kroger, he needed bread and milk. Stood in the cereal aisle, staring at prices, when he heard voices from the next aisle over. Heard she tried to get in, and he'd changed the locks. Seems extreme. I mean, she made a mistake, but he's being awfully hard about it. My husband said he saw them at the diner, Linda and that Derek fellow, and they seemed happy. Frank always was a hard man to live with. Frank set the bread in his cart, walked to the checkout. The cashier, a girl maybe 20, wouldn't meet his eyes. Just scanned his items, took his money, handed him the receipt. Have a nice day, she said to the register. In the parking lot, Frank loaded the bags into the truck bed and saw a flyer under his wiper. He pulled it out. Not a flyer, a printout. Facebook post, Linda's account, posted this morning. Heartbroken. After 38 years of marriage, my husband has locked me out of our home and is refusing to speak with me. I don't know what I did to deserve this cruelty. Please pray for us. 200 comments. Frank skimmed them. Praying for you, Linda. Men can be so vindictive. Stay strong. You deserve better. Frank Holloway should be ashamed. Frank crumpled the paper, threw it in the truck bed, drove home with his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. That evening, his phone rang. Sarah. He almost didn't answer. Did anyway. Dad, what the hell? Hello to you too. Mom's devastated. She's crying. She just wanted to talk and you humiliated her in front of the neighbors. I didn't do anything, Frank said. She showed up with her boyfriend and tried to use a key that doesn't work anymore. You changed the locks? It's my house. It's her house too. You're still married. No, we're divorced. Papers are signed. She made that choice. She made a mistake. People make mistakes, Dad. Frank sat down on the couch. Sarah, your mother posted on Facebook that I'm cruel, that she doesn't know what she did to deserve this. You believe that? Silence. You know what she did? Frank continued. She sold Grandma Holloway's wedding ring on eBay for $340, 2 weeks before she left, while she was planning her exit. That ring your grandma wore for 43 years. Sarah's voice wavered. Mom said she needed money for the apartment deposit. She needed money because she was leaving me for a man half her age. And now she wants to come back because he dumped her. And she's lying to the whole town, saying I'm the bad guy. You are being the bad guy. You changed the locks. She filed a lawsuit this morning claiming I abused her. Emotionally abused her so bad she had to leave. That sound like someone who wants to reconcile? Sarah didn't answer. The lawsuit was filed at 8:45, Frank said. She didn't knock on my door until 9. She came here with legal papers already submitted. This isn't about reconciliation, Sarah. It's about money. Mom wouldn't. She would. She did. And now she's got you and Danny doing her legwork. That's not fair. Isn't it? Sarah was crying now. I just want my family back. Frank's chest hurt. I know, honey. I do too. But some things you can't put back together. Dad, I love you, but I can't help you with this. He hung up, turned the phone off, set it on the coffee table next to the TV remote and the cold mug of coffee. Outside, it was full dark. He could see Doris's kitchen light on through the trees. Solid, dependable. There when he needed it. Frank's phone, still off, sat silent. But in the morning, he knew there'd be more. More emails, more calls, more legal papers. Linda's lawyer was good. Bill had said so. And Frank didn't have $5,000, let alone 10. He had the house, that's all. And if he lost in court, he'd lose that too. Frank sat in the dark and felt the walls closing in, not from fear, from fury. 38 years, 2 kids, a house paid off with his own sweat, a mother's ring sold for grocery money, and now she wanted him to just open the door and let her take the rest. Outside, a car drove past. Headlights swept across the living room wall, then faded. Frank didn't move, just sat there in his own house, in his own darkness, and made a decision he didn't speak out loud. She wasn't getting one more goddamn thing. By Thursday, the whole town knew. Frank stopped at the post office to mail his electric bill. Could have done it online, but he'd always mailed it, and the room went quiet when he walked in. 3 people at the counter, all turned, all stared. He mailed the bill, walked out. At the hardware store, picking up furnace filters, the owner, Gary, known him 20 years, rang him up without a word, just scanned the item, took his cash, handed him the receipt. Thanks, Gary. Gary nodded. Didn't say see you later like he always did. Frank drove home. Friday morning, another email from Linda's lawyer, 10 pages of legal motions, words like discovery and interrogatories and deposition. Bill would have to respond to all of it. More hours. More money. Frank sat at the kitchen table and did the math on a scrap of paper. Social Security, $1,847 a month. Mortgage, paid off. Utilities, $340. Groceries, $280. Truck payment, $0. Paid off. Gas, $120. Insurance, $180. Left over, $927. Bill's retainer, $3,000. Frank had $1,200 in savings. Checking account had $340. He set the pencil down. The phone rang. Sarah again. He didn't answer. It rang again an hour later. Danny. He didn't answer. At noon, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Frank, this is Derek. Linda's real upset. Just talk to her, man. Work it out. Don't be a dick about it. Frank stared at the message. The kid was 34 years old calling him a dick. He deleted it. Blocked the number. Another buzz. Email. Not from the lawyer this time. From the county assessor's office. Subject, property tax assessment, final notice. Frank opened it. His stomach dropped. Property taxes. Due March 1st, $2,847. He'd forgotten. Paid them every year from the joint account. Linda had always handled it. He hadn't thought about it since she left. Due in 3 weeks. Frank put his head in his hands. $1,540 in total savings. $2,147. Due. $3,000 retainer for bill, already spent on the first filing. He couldn't pay all three. The house phone rang. Old landline he'd kept because cell service was spotty. He picked it up. Mr. Holloway? A woman's voice. Professional. This is Jennifer from Keegan Associates. I'm calling on behalf of Linda Holloway. We'd like to offer a settlement. Frank's grip tightened on the receiver. I'm represented by counsel. I understand, but we thought you might want to hear the offer before involving more legal fees. It's quite generous. I'm listening. Mrs. And Holloway is willing to drop the lawsuit in exchange for 50% of the home's equity. We've had it appraised at $320,000. You'd retain ownership, but you'd owe her $160,000 payable within 90 days. If you can't pay, the home would be sold and proceeds divided. Frank said nothing. Mr. Holloway, I heard you. This is a very fair offer. Court could award her more, and it saves you significant legal expenses. Tell Mrs. Holloway, Frank said slowly, that she can go to hell. He hung up. Stood at the kitchen window, looked at the back field. Dead grass under old snow, fence lines sagging. The barn his father built in '71, half collapsed now, tin roof peeling. Everything was falling apart. And he was 65 years old with $1,540 to his name. The doorbell rang. Frank walked to the door, looked through the peephole. Danny, standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking at his shoes. Frank opened the door, didn't invite him in. Grandpa? Danny's eyes were red. Can I talk to you? About what? About... The kid's voice broke. I need to tell you something. Frank waited. I'm sorry, Danny said. Mom and Grandma, they asked me to come see you, to ask about the will in the house, and I didn't want to, but Mom said... He was crying now. I'm so sorry. I should have told you right away. Frank's chest tightened. They're planning to contest the will, Danny said. After you pass, Mom's got papers drawn up, and Grandma, she's trying to get the house now because she says once you're gone, Sarah'll get everything anyway and... Danny! The boy looked up. Come inside, Frank said. Danny stepped into the house. Frank closed the door behind him. Sit down, Frank said. They sat at the kitchen table. Frank poured 2 mugs of coffee, pushed one toward Danny. Tell me everything, Frank said. Every word, every plan. All of it, and Danny, voice shaking, hands wrapped around the mug like it was the only solid thing in the world, told him. Danny pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Mom's been texting me, and Grandma, I saved them all. He turned the screen toward Frank. Frank put on his reading glasses, started scrolling. Sarah, did you ask about the deed? Danny, not yet. Feels weird. Sarah, Danny, we need this. Just find out if it's in both names. Linda, your grandfather is being unreasonable. We need to know what we're dealing with legally. Danny, I'll try. Sarah, don't try. Do it. This is your inheritance too. Don't you want to go back to school? That house is worth $320K. Your share would be substantial. Frank's jaw tightened. He kept scrolling. Linda, Danny, I need you to keep visiting him. Keep him happy. If he updates his will and cuts me out, we'll have to contest it. That's harder. Better if we can settle now. Sarah, Mom's right. Just keep Grandpa soft until the hearing. Don't let him get angry. Danny, I feel bad about this. Sarah, you want to work at AutoZone forever? This is family. We take care of each other. Frank set the phone down, looked at his grandson. The boy's face was blotchy, eyes swollen. When did this start? Frank asked. Right after Grandma filed the lawsuit. Mom called me, said I needed to help, said you were being cruel to Grandma, that she just wanted to come home and you were punishing her. Danny wiped his face. I believed her at first, but then I saw you. At lunch. You weren't mean. You were just sad. Frank said nothing. And then the questions they wanted me to ask, about the will, about the deed, about whether you had savings. It felt wrong. Like I was— Danny's voice cracked. Like I was spying on you. You were. I know. Danny put his face in his hands. I'm so sorry, Grandpa. I'm so sorry. Frank looked at the kid, 18 years old. Weak, maybe. Easily manipulated, but he'd come back, told the truth. That counted for something. Why are you telling me this now? Frank asked. Danny looked up. Because Tuesday, at the porch, I saw Grandma screaming at you, saw Derek filming you like it was funny, and Mrs. Fletcher— He shook his head. She said Grandma stole your grandmother's ring. Is that true? Yes. Mom said Grandma needed it for the apartment deposit. She sold it on eBay for $340, 2 weeks before she left. Danny closed his eyes. Jesus. Your mother knows. I told her. She didn't tell me that part. Danny opened his eyes. Grandpa, they're planning to drag this out, bleed you dry on legal fees until you have to settle. Mom said it's a war of attrition. Whoever runs out of money first loses. Frank had suspected as much. Hearing it confirmed was different. Anything else? Frank asked. Danny hesitated, then nodded. Pulled up more texts. Linda, if Frank contests the settlement, we go to court. Keegan says we have a strong case for constructive abandonment, especially with Derek's testimony. Sarah, what will Derek say? Linda, that Frank was controlling, monitored my phone, isolated me from friends, made me feel worthless, all the buzzwords judges respond to. Sarah, will that work? Linda, Keegan says judges side with the woman in these cases, especially older women leaving their husbands. We play the victim. We win. Frank felt something cold settle in his chest. Derek's going to lie, Danny said. In court, say you abused her. I never touched her. I know, but Grandpa— Danny's voice dropped. Who's going to believe you over them? Derek's young, good-looking. Grandma's a woman, and you're— An old man? Frank finished. Danny looked miserable. I didn't mean— It's true. Frank stood, walked to the window, looked at Doris's house. They think I'm an easy target. Yeah. Frank turned. Can I have those screenshots? You can have all of them. Danny fiddled with his phone. What's your email? Frank gave it to him. A minute later, his phone buzzed. Dozens of screenshots. The whole conspiracy laid out in blue and gray text bubbles. Thank you, Frank said. Danny stood. Are you going to— what are you going to do? I'm going to win. Grandpa, they have money. Grandma's boyfriend is helping her pay for the lawyers. And Mom's been saving. They can outlast you. Frank looked at his grandson. Danny, you ever hear the story about your great-grandfather, my dad? No. He was a dairy farmer, had 60 head of cattle. This was back in the 50s, when milk prices crashed. He was losing money every month. The bank wanted to foreclose, take the farm, sell it off. Danny listened. My dad went to the bank, Frank continued, sat down with the president, old bastard named Hutchins, and my dad said, you can take the farm. But if you do, I'll shoot every cow before you get them. You'll get land with nothing on it. Did he mean it? Hell yes, he meant it. And Hutchins knew it. So the bank restructured the loan, gave him 5 more years. He paid them back, every cent. Frank walked back to the table, sat down. Sometimes, he said, winning isn't about having more money. It's about being willing to lose everything before you let someone take it from you. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you need me to do? Nothing. You've done enough. No. Danny leaned forward. Grandpa, let me help. Please, let me fix this. Frank studied the boy, saw something in his face he hadn't seen at the diner. Determination, maybe even courage. You want to help? Frank asked. Yes. Then you testify. When this goes to court, you tell the judge what they planned. Show him those texts. Danny's face went pale. Mom will kill me. Probably. I'll lose my family. Maybe. Or maybe you'll get it back. The part's worth having. Danny swallowed hard, nodded. Okay. You sure? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. Frank reached across the table, shook his grandson's hand, firm grip, man to man. You're a good kid, Frank said. Danny's eyes welled up again. I don't feel like it. You came back. You told the truth. That's what good men do. After Danny left, Frank sat at the table with his phone, scrolling through the screenshots. Linda and Sarah plotting, planning, treating him like an obstacle to be removed. He forwarded everything to Bill Tompkins with a one-line email. This help? Bill's response came back in 3 minutes. This is gold. Call me. Frank called. Frank. Bill's voice was tight with excitement. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. This is witness tampering. This is, Christ, this is everything we need. Can you use it in court? Can I use it? I'm going to blow their case apart with it. Linda's claiming you abused her, but she's planning to have her boyfriend lie on the stand. The judge will see right through it. What about Derek? Will he still testify? He might, but now we know he's lying. We can cross-examine him with this. Destroy his credibility. Frank felt something loosen in his chest. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. What do we do now? Frank asked. Now we file a motion to compel discovery. Force them to turn over their communications. If they've deleted anything, we nail them for spoliation of evidence. And we subpoena Derek's social media. All of it. How long will that take? Couple weeks. We'll request an expedited hearing. Frank, Bill paused. We might actually win this. Might? Judges are unpredictable. But we've got evidence now, real evidence. That changes everything. After he hung up, Frank walked to the porch, stood in the cold. Across the yard, Doris's door opened. She came out in her coat, walked to the property line. Everything okay? She called. Getting there, Frank said. She nodded, started to turn back. Doris, Frank said. She stopped. Thank you, for Tuesday. Doris was quiet for a moment. Then, somebody had to say it. Still, thank you. She looked at him across the snow-dusted grass. Frank, I stayed with Ed for 40 years. He drank, yelled, threw things, never hit me, but came close. I stayed because I thought that's what you did. You made your bed, you lay in it. Frank listened. Watching you change those locks, Doris said, was the bravest thing I've seen in a long time. Don't let them make you doubt it. She went back inside. Frank stood on the porch. The sun was setting early, like it did in February. Cardinals in the oak tree, settling in for the night. His phone buzzed. Pastor Miles. Text message. Frank, can I stop by tomorrow? Something I need to tell you. Frank texted back. Sure. Afternoon work? Perfect. See you then. Frank pocketed the phone, went inside, made coffee, sat at the table with the screenshots still open on his phone. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe. Part 7. Gathering Arsenal. Pastor Miles showed up Saturday at 2, drove his old Buick up the driveway like he wasn't sure he should be there. Frank met him at the door. Come in, Paul. They sat at the kitchen table. Frank poured coffee. Miles wrapped his hands around the mug, didn't drink. I've been thinking about our conversation, Miles said, about Carol, about what I told her. Frank waited. I called her last night, asked how she was doing. Miles looked at his coffee. She's still paying off that debt. 6 years later, $32,000. He maxed out every card in her name, then disappeared. She'll be paying it until she's 70. I'm sorry, Frank said. I told her to forgive him, to give him another chance. Miles finally looked up. I told her it was the Christian thing to do, and she listened to me because I'm her pastor, because she trusted me. You didn't know what he'd do. I should have. The signs were there. Miles set the mug down. Frank, I came here to tell you something. What you're doing, changing the locks, fighting this lawsuit, that's not unchristian. That's wisdom. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone rob you blind. Appreciate you saying so. And I want you to know, if this goes to court, if they ask me to testify about your character, I'll do it. I'll tell them the truth. You're a good man. You kept your word for 38 years. And Linda, he shook his head. Linda made her choice. Now she has to live with it. Frank felt something warm settle in his chest. Thank you, Paul. Don't thank me. I should have said this weeks ago. Miles stood. I need to get going. Church council meeting. But Frank, if you need anything, character witness, deposition, whatever Bill needs, you call me. After the pastor left, Frank called Bill. Got another witness, Frank said. Pastor Miles. He'll testify. Good. We need all the credibility we can get. Papers rustled on Bill's end. I've been going through Derek's social media. Frank, this kid is an idiot. He's documented everything. Posts about moving up, photos of your house, comments about country living. There's even a video of him and Linda at a bar 3 weeks ago. She's wearing jewelry I bet you paid for. Probably. I'm going to subpoena all of it. Print out every post, every comment, every photo. Jury sees that, they'll know exactly what this is. Jury? Frank's stomach tightened. I thought this was just a hearing. Depends. If Linda's lawyer pushes for a full trial, we might end up with a jury. But honestly, I don't think they will. Juries are unpredictable. They might see a 62-year-old woman and sympathize, or they might see a gold digger and side with you. Keegan won't want to risk it. What do you think they'll do? Push for settlement. Hard. They're going to come at you with numbers, try to scare you into giving her half. Bill paused. Frank, I need you to be ready for that. They're going to make it sound like you'll lose everything if you fight. Don't believe them. I won't. Good, because we've got them on the ropes. Those texts from Danny? That's conspiracy. The judge sees that. Linda's credibility is shot. Frank hung up feeling steadier. He made lunch, sandwich, chips, coffee, and ate at the table, looking at his father's watch on his wrist, 2:15. His dad would have been 89 now if he'd lived. Died at 67. Heart attack in the barn, quick and clean. Frank wondered sometimes if that was the better way. Die before everything fell apart. The doorbell rang. Frank looked through the peephole. Doris. He opened the door. She had a casserole dish again, but this time she didn't come in. Just held it out. Turkey tetrazzini, she said. Doris, you don't have to keep... I know. She met his eyes. Frank, can I ask you something? Sure. When this is over, when you win, are you going to be okay, living here alone? Frank didn't know how to answer that. I'm asking, Doris said, because I've been alone 3 years now, and some days it's peaceful, other days it's just empty. Yeah, Frank said quietly. I know what you mean. I was thinking. Doris shifted the casserole. When this is done, maybe Sunday dinners, you and me, nothing fancy, just company. Frank felt his throat tighten. I'd like that. Okay then. She handed him the casserole. Eat something, Frank. You're getting thin. She walked back across the yard. Frank watched her go, this 71-year-old woman who'd found the courage to speak up when no one else would. He took the casserole inside, set it on the stove. His phone buzzed. Bill again. Judge scheduled the hearing. March 15th. 2 weeks. We need to meet this week. Go over your testimony. Frank texted back. I'll be there. He looked at the calendar on the wall. March 15th circled in red now, in his mind, if not on paper. 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks before everything came down to what he could prove in a courtroom. The landline rang. Frank picked up. "Mr. Holloway?" A man's voice. Unfamiliar. "This is Marcus Webb. I'm a private investigator working for Keegan Associates." Frank's hand tightened on the receiver. "What do you want?" "Just doing some background. Routine questions. Can you tell me about your relationship with your wife? Any incidents of domestic discord?" "I'm represented by counsel. Talk to my lawyer." "Mr. Holloway, I'm just trying to—" Frank hung up. His phone buzzed immediately. Text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Webb. I'll be in touch. We need to talk about your anger issues." Frank stared at the message. Anger issues? They were building a narrative, setting him up. He forwarded the text to Bill with a note. They sent a PI. Bill called back immediately. "Don't talk to him. Don't respond to texts. They're trying to bait you into saying something they can use." "What should I do?" "Nothing. Let him dig. He won't find anything because there's nothing to find." "But Frank, be careful. Don't lose your temper. Don't give them ammunition." "I won't." "Good. See you Wednesday. My office, 9 a.m. We'll prep your testimony." Frank spent the rest of the weekend going through papers, old tax returns, mortgage documents, bills in his name, the deed to the house, his name only, purchased before the marriage. Linda had signed a quitclaim deed in '88, giving up any ownership interest when they refinanced. He'd forgotten about that. Frank pulled the document out of the filing cabinet. Yellowed paper, notary stamp, Linda's signature at the bottom. She'd signed away her claim to the house 37 years ago. He scanned it on his printer, bought at Walmart 5 years ago, still worked, and emailed it to Bill. Bill called back in 10 minutes. "Frank, this is huge. She has no legal claim to the house. None. It's yours. Free and clear." "Will that hold up?" "Absolutely. She quit-claimed it, in writing, notarized. She can argue for alimony, maybe some personal property, but the house? It's untouchable." For the first time since this started, Frank felt something like victory. "Does her lawyer know about this?" Frank asked. "If they did their due diligence, they should, but I'm guessing they didn't." "Keegan probably assumed it was marital property and filed based on that." Bill laughed. "Oh, this is going to be fun." Monday morning, Frank drove to Bill's office. They spent 3 hours going over testimony. What to say, what not to say, how to answer questions without getting defensive. "Judges don't like angry old men," Bill said. "Fair or not, that's reality. You need to be calm, respectful. Answer the questions simply. Don't elaborate. Don't get emotional." "I can do that." "Even when Linda's lawyer calls you controlling, abusive, even when they twist your words?" Frank thought about that. "Yeah, I can do it." "Good. Because they're going to try to break you, make you look unstable. Don't give them the satisfaction." They worked through mock questions, cross-examination scenarios. Bill played Linda's lawyer, aggressive and cutting. "Mr. Holloway, isn't it true you monitored your wife's phone?" "No." "You never checked her messages?" "Her calls?" "No." "You never questioned where she was going, who she was with?" "Only when she stopped coming home." "So you admit you were suspicious?" "I was married. She was my wife. When someone changes their behavior, you notice." Bill nodded. "Good. That's good. Stick with that." By the time Frank left, his head hurt, but he felt prepared. Wednesday morning, a letter came. County assessor. Property taxes still due. Final notice before lien. Frank called the county office. "Can I set up a payment plan?" he asked. Payment plans require a down payment of 25%. That's $712. Frank checked his account. Had $640 after paying Bill's retainer. "I don't have that right now," Frank said. "Then the lien will be filed March 1st. After that, interest accrues at 18% annually." Frank hung up, sat at the table, looked at the house around him, the walls he'd painted, the floors he'd refinished, the kitchen cabinets he'd installed himself at 53 years old, working weekends for 2 months. If he lost to the lien, the county could foreclose, sell the house at auction. All of it, everything, could be gone. Frank's hands were shaking again. He called Bill. "I can't pay the property taxes," Frank said. "Don't have the money." Bill was quiet. "How much do you need?" 712 for the down payment, 2847 total. Frank, I know. Listen, let me talk to the judge. Request a stay on any liens until the case is resolved. It's a long shot, but do it. After he hung up, Frank sat in the kitchen and looked at his father's watch. 3:15. In 12 days, he'd be in a courtroom fighting for everything he had. And he didn't know if it would be enough. Frank didn't sleep the night before the hearing. Lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, running through testimony in his head. Bill's voice. Stay calm. Don't elaborate. Answer simply. By 5 a.m., he gave up, made coffee, showered, put on the suit he'd bought for Michael's wedding 12 years ago. Still fit, barely, navy blue, white shirt, the tie Linda had picked out. He'd thrown that one away, wore a plain burgundy one instead. The courthouse was 20 minutes away, county seat. Frank arrived at 8:30. Bill met him on the steps. "You ready?" Bill asked. "As I'll ever be." They walked inside. Marble floors, high ceilings, the smell of old wood and floor polish. Courtroom 3B. Bill pushed through the doors. Linda was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer. Woman in her 40s, expensive suit, briefcase open. Linda wore a navy dress, pearls, looked like she was going to church. Derek wasn't there. Linda glanced at Frank, looked away. Frank sat at the defense table. Bill laid out papers. The bailiff called everyone to rise. Judge Martha Hendricks entered. 64, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She sat, looked at both tables. "This is Holloway v. Holloway, motion for temporary orders regarding marital property." She looked at Linda's lawyer. "Miss Chen, you filed. Proceed." Chen stood. "Your Honor, my client was forced to leave the marital home due to Mr. Holloway's emotional abuse and controlling behavior. She's now homeless while he lives in a house worth over $300,000. We're requesting immediate access to the home and an equitable division of assets." Judge Hendricks looked at Bill. Response? Bill stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway left voluntarily to cohabit with her boyfriend. She filed for divorce. And the house isn't marital property. Mrs. Holloway signed a quitclaim deed in 1988 relinquishing all ownership interest." Chen's face tightened. "That quitclaim was signed under duress." "Do you have evidence of duress?" the judge asked. "We're prepared to present testimony." "That's not what I asked." Chen hesitated. "Not at this time, Your Honor." Judge Hendricks looked at the papers in front of her. "The quitclaim is properly executed and notarized. Unless you can prove duress or fraud, it stands." "What else?" "We have evidence of Mr. Holloway's controlling behavior. Text messages, witness statements." "From whom?" "Derek Paulson, my client's—" "Her boyfriend," the judge finished. "Anyone else?" Chen faltered. "We're working on additional witnesses." Judge Hendricks removed her glasses. "Ms. Chen, your client left the marriage, moved in with another man, filed for divorce. Now she wants back in the house?" She looked at Linda. "Ma'am, help me understand." Linda stood. "Your Honor, I made a mistake." "Sit down," the judge said. Not unkindly, just firm. "I'll hear testimony if we go to trial. Right now, I'm looking at facts." She picked up another document. Frank recognized it, the screenshots from Danny. Mr. Tompkins submitted text messages showing a plan to manipulate Mr. Holloway and contest his estate. "These came from your daughter and grandson, Mrs. Holloway. You aware of these?" Linda's face went pale. Those were taken out of context. Yes or no?" "Yes, but—" "And you filed this motion the same morning you attempted to enter Mr. Holloway's home, before he'd even refused you access." Linda didn't answer. Judge Hendricks set the papers down. "Motion denied. The home belongs to Mr. Holloway. You have no legal claim to it. If you want to pursue alimony or division of personal property, file appropriately. But you're not getting this house." She banged the gavel. Court adjourned. Frank stood slowly. His legs felt weak. Bill gripped his shoulder. We won, Bill said quietly. Linda was still sitting at her table. Chen packed her briefcase, lips pressed thin. Linda's hands were folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Frank walked past without looking at her, out into the hallway. The marble felt solid under his feet. Danny was waiting on a bench outside, stood when he saw Frank. Grandpa? Frank stopped. I heard the judge ruled for you, Danny said. I'm glad. Frank studied his grandson. The kid looked older somehow, tired. You want to start over? Frank asked. Real this time? Yes, sir. Then we'll try. But Danny, trust is earned, not given. I know. Danny nodded. I'll earn it. Frank walked out into the cold March air, sun breaking through clouds. That thin winter light that promised spring wasn't far off. Doris was waiting by Frank's truck. She'd driven herself, parked 3 spaces down. Well, she asked. Judge said the house is mine. Doris smiled. Didn't say anything, just smiled. Pastor Miles pulled up, rolled down his window. Frank, I heard. Congratulations. Thanks for coming, Paul. Wouldn't have missed it. Miles waved and drove on. Frank climbed into his truck, started the engine, drove home through town, past the diner, the hardware store, the church, past all the people who'd whispered about him. He didn't care anymore. The farmhouse looked the same when he pulled in. White clapboard, sagging porch, 10 acres stretching behind it. His father's land, his land now. Frank walked to the porch, sat in the old chair. The wood creaked under his weight, familiar and solid. Through the trees, he could see Doris in her kitchen window. She waved. He waved back. A cardinal landed on the fence post, red against the gray wood, cocked its head, looked at Frank, flew off toward the field. Frank sat there with his coffee, same mug, same ritual, and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. The house was his. The keys were his. The choice was his. He wasn't waiting for permission anymore, just living. Spring was coming. Maybe he'd plant apple trees like his father had. Maybe he'd fix the porch steps. Maybe he'd just sit here and watch the cardinals. It was his choice now. All his. 6 weeks later, the snow was gone. Mud season. Frank stood in the back field with a shovel, marking spots for apple trees. 4 of them. Same variety his father had planted in '73. Doris called from her porch. Sunday dinner's at 5. I'll be there, Frank called back. Danny's truck pulled into the driveway. 4th visit this month. The boy was trying. That was something. Pastor Miles had stopped by Wednesday. Just coffee, no agenda. That was becoming regular, too. Frank looked at the house. Paint peeling on the north side. Gutters needed cleaning. Porch steps still creaked. But it was his. Linda had moved to South Bend. He'd heard. Didn't matter much now. Frank drove the shovel into the soft earth. Come fall, these trees would take root. Come spring after that, maybe blossoms. He had time. The cardinal pair had nested in the oak. He could hear them now, calling back and forth, life persisting, moving forward. Frank smiled, kept digging.